Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm joined today. This is Mr. Max Bovin, and I'm joined today by Chubby Funster that is launching a vampire game, a
Yeah,
vampire supplement, I guess, to be used with Shadow Dark, which is currently on Kickstarter. It's almost over, so don't delay. You can find the link in the description down below here, which is called Shadow City, Blood and Neon.
yeah. It's it's been going really good. We're at 800% funded now, so
Yeah. Well, you started with a modest goal too, so
yeah,
and
yeah,
and I like that also that you're starting with like a finished product. Put some there you go. Yeah, so you like it's ready to go basically, right? Like people are gonna back, and then the Kickstarter is gonna end, and then like it's ready to they're ready to pick up their book.
yeah. The fulfillment will be basically instantaneous. As soon as I get the list from Kickstarter of these are all the people whose names are payment processed correctly and everything. Everything will go out by email digitally. The basic funding is $20 for the PDF, and then you get codes for drive through to print it on demand if you want. So if you want to print it on demand, you pay the at cost of printing plus the shipping, and that's your part. If you just want to pay the $20 for the PDF, then we're good. And
That
so it's all in the hand of the customer.
that has become like a very popular way to do a thing now, like those at cost code basically. Just like make it
Yeah,
very
I
much
I
easier
think
for
it's
you.
good. Yeah, because a lot of people don't want the on demand; they just want the PDF anyway. But if they have that code, then at least they could like there's like a decision. There's like a skipping over the decision point. So like a lot of times they're buying the product, not seeing the PDF, and having
Hmm.
to make the decision at that point whether they want the PDF or the book. So this way they could get the PDF, and if they don't want to print it because they didn't like it enough, let's say, then they don't have to pay that extra. So it's kind of like it puts the decision in their hands in that sense.
You also make your life much easier because now you only have like basically two tiers on the Kickstarter. You got like
Yeah,
the just show me support, but then also like you have like you want one code or you want five, and you get a bit of a discount there, and that's about it, right?
yeah,
You don't have to deal with shipping yourself. You don't have to deal with like global inventory, and we I guess we learned that with the supply chain shock, right?
that's right. And with the whole diamond distributor thing that went down recently,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people were in positions that they really shouldn't have been. It would be, I've said it's kind of like if you're running a business and you set up all of your supply chain so that it's just in time delivery.
Yeah.
If anything happens, you will be screwed. You will not have what you need on that day, and so it's like totally a predictable problem. And to have that much of your inventory tied up in a third party who could, if they screw up, you're out huge amounts of money. It just seems nuts to me. I hate to be in that position. So
We've seen so many
um,
Kickstarter fail. Like now, I guess now we're like business kind of talk, but we've seen like so many like Kickstarter fail now or struggle because of they have product that are not ready. So like, oh, you back now, but you're gonna receive in a year or in a year and a half, something like that, right? And
right.
then like things have been very chaotic. So things change, and now like, oh, all of a sudden like, oh, those guys I was thinking doing business with doesn't work anymore, or the cost of living doubles all of a sudden,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now
and
they.
the print on demand stuff is printed locally to wherever you are. So like if you ordered it, it would be printed in Canada
Mhm.
and shipped to you rather than trying to cross the border. So there wouldn't be any tariff issue or anything like that. And a lot of times it's really short. The guy who runs Dungeons and Dyslexia YouTube channel, he was involved in the playtests of Shadow City with me, and he says when he orders stuff from drive through, it comes in like a week and a half. It takes
Mhm.
like 3 or 4 weeks for me to get it. So he must be like really close to wherever it's being printed in the UK, and he's getting it right away. So yeah, I think it's a good shift. I think eventually I will. do something where I do offset printing,
Yeah.
but I want to do it after knowing kind of how how Kickstarter system works and interacting with all that. I don't like to change too many things up at once. That's how you get somebody. There'll be somebody who's like, "Oh, I'm going to do dice with my Kickstarter," and they've never made a dice their whole life. They have no idea what the production cost, shipping problems are, and then that's what sinks them. So I think it's important to kind of change one thing at a time.
I think it's also like I think it's a good approach too if you want to do like maybe a second edition or something like that at some point. Like when you put a product out, it gains some success, there's some interest, some more people want it. Maybe there's a desire for like a fancier edition. Then like you can bring the reprint with the offset printing, maybe a bit of an update, some fix of from the feedback that you got. But yeah, that's a whole lot more complication.
That's right. Yeah, I think a lot of people get far down the rabbit hole before they realize that they're not doing what they want to do anymore.
Yeah,
And
and
I don't want to get into the position where I'm spending all my time dealing with that kind of crap.
yeah, and I understand like if you want to put a product out, you say like that might be my one shot at it. I'm gonna give it my all,
Yeah,
but it's aiming high for. Anyway, enough of this business talk. That's a bit boring. Just one more thing that I want to mention too, because you're linked to Shadow Dark, and then we can dive more into what exactly ShadowCity is. Basically, your supplement, right? Would that be a fair characterization?
no, because you are in Vampire the Masquerade, but in Shadow City you're tougher than a regular human and you can heal better than a regular human, but you do have some
Sorry,
superpowers, but you're not
sorry.
like
I mean, ShadowCity, the book, is a supplement to Shadow Dark.
oh
That's
supplement. I thought you said Superman. Sorry.
no
Yeah,
supplement.
it is a
Sorry.
in it's its own standalone game, but it is derivative of Shadow Dark,
Oh, okay.
and it's technically under the Shadow Dark third party license, so that it will be legally treated that way and not be there won't be any kind of problems with distinguishing the two games. So technically, it's under the Shadow Dark license. It's a third party supplement for Shadow Dark, but you don't need the core book to do it.
That was my next question because unfortunately, Shadow Dark, the core book, can be quite pricey, especially getting in Canada here.
Yeah.
So you say like it's standalone. That's the word I wanted you to hear. That I wanted you
Yeah,
wanted to.
you're totally good. A lot of the systems that that resolve, like resolve checks and tests and stuff are very similar to how it is done in Shadow Dark, but I use a different set of core stats. So instead of strength, dex, con, I have a set of stats that I feel is better for modern situations and for vampire in particular. Like there's a willpower stat, because being able to resist supernatural things is its own kind of special element in this game. So if another vampire or werewolf or something tries to use a power on you, you can resist it with the willpower in a way that doesn't really fit over into strength, dex, constitution, or whatever. So there's also, I separate aiming into an awareness stat, and put dodging and defense into a quickness stat. So there's no overload on the dex. Like I feel like a lot of that'd be my number one criticism of the base D&D system, is that there's too much placed on the dexterity stat and not enough placed on the charisma stat. Now, in a modern setting, having a good charisma, it's magnetism in my system, is much more powerful than in a medieval setting where you're going into a dungeon. Being able, there's people everywhere. Being able to influence people is much more important in a modern time setting. So I feel like the stats that I've developed for Shadow City are much more balanced, and so that my goal is everybody can just roll them randomly, and it does. You wouldn't doesn't matter how they fall, you'll be able to play that character just fine.
All right. So, all right. So you got all the rules you need. So it's not just a setting that you're selling, but I guess the big drop point is this setting, right? Is the fact that you're bringing like Shadow Dark to the modern era, modern-ish, I guess. It's 80s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the 80s is it's different. It's a lot different from today, but I mean, compared to anything, 1900 or something. I mean, wow, what a different world,
Yeah.
Um, but I think I've described it this way in other talks, like the one with Crispy that we
Yeah.
both were talking about earlier. There's in a now let me see how to say this right. So, sorry, I lost myself there a second. Um, Yeah. So okay. Here's what I was trying to say. Sorry, I went deep in the wrong direction. Okay. So if you want to play in a modern vampire setting,
Yeah.
the system that you have to use is very complex because there's kind of one dominating system in the milieu, so to speak. So using Vampire the Masquerade is kind of required, and then there are problems or things that people don't like about Vampire the Masquerade that
Yeah.
become inseparable from the setting itself. Whereas you don't make that mistake with Forgotten Realms. Like you could play Forgotten Realms with a super trimmed down OSR chassis or with a super complex game system like Fifth Edition or Daggerheart, even like if you adapted, like you could do things with a very complex system, but Vampire is kind of trapped in that very complex Vampire the Masquerade mechanical system. And so ShadowCity allows you to play the game in a very different way with a very light system, but have the same all the things that you like about the setting you can keep, right? You don't have to change those things. So I'm hoping that eventually almost all settings will be like that. Where right now some settings are dominated by one or two systems, and it makes everybody think about those settings in the terms of those systems, right? Like Shadowrun is another example. Like very few people think about playing Shadowrun where you're not rolling a whole bunch of d6s on the table,
Mm-hmm.
but you could write a game for Shadowrun that was not like that, right? So I hope that ShadowCity will be this for vampires. I hope somebody will write one for other systems like that where they don't like the dominant power within that setting, and they're going to make an alternative mechanic to make it work better, because the mechanics of Vampire the Masquerade push gameplay in a particular path,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's very hard to you can play it in a way like ShadowCity, but it would require a lot of effort on your part. There's all this inertia towards a particular outcome for Vampire the Masquerade, and in ShadowCity, all the inertia is towards a dungeon crawl action, very quick resolving brutal system, not a long drawn out political drama, right? So just by changing the mechanical basis of how you're playing with the setting, you change a whole host of ways in which you interact with that
Yeah.
setting. You
I
know,
guess that's what the people like that like to do a video essay would call like the ludocognitive dissonance. Is that the term?
so,
Like the ludocognitive dissonance
yes, yeah,
or ludonarrative dissonance?
yeah, and
Ludonarrative, I think, is the term, right? It's
yeah,
like
I don't, I'm not into the terms, but I know what you mean. Yeah,
the
it's
lore and the setting of the game tell you that the game should be played one way, but the mechanics tell you that the game should be played another way, right?
yeah.
It's like
There's
the
definitely I don't know that cognitive dis. I know cognitive dissonance is a great.
It's little narrative, the term I was looking for. Sorry,
Yeah,
little
I'm saying like,
narratives.
but they're using cognitive dissonance as like the model of how they're
Yep,
making it. So I see what they're saying. Like there's a disconnect between the goal and the
yep,
means of achieving that goal. But I don't know, because I think people still, that their tendency is not to try to make it dissonant. They'll move in that direction and they'll say, I'm just going to run it this way. They won't fight against it. Whereas
hmm
like people will fight against cognitive dissonance and try
yeah.
to make it. So I
Well,
guess it's a fine philosophical point, but I just think it affects how you think. It affects like when you sit down at the table, the range of actions that you assume you're capable of doing are affected by those decisions. And so you
yeah,
never get to a point where there's that much differentiation, because you are aligned with the system by your thoughts are being aligned with the system. And that's one of the things I'm pushing against, because when I try to pitch the game, people have in their head an idea of how Vampire works, and my first kind of point to them is often throw that away, because it's not
oh, that's
that
interesting.
when you're playing with this system, the
Yep.
system pushes you in a totally different direction than Masquerade does.
That's interesting. Let me tell you about like my experience with Vampire the Masquerade. Right, I've been playing in the game RPG since the early '90s, and when we got access to Vampire the Masquerade, in northern Quebec, right, things sometimes come a little later, maybe late '90s, I guess. Uh, we were all over that just because like it was so different, right? A lot of people, I guess, like a lot of people in that time, like no, D&D was RPG, and they have like some other like D&D clone. It was always like medieval fantasy, and then something else came along that was like so different. It was supposed to be like all those like different kind of intrigue and stuff like that. This darker lore linked to the real world. We were all over that. Although I got to admit, I have some hang up with vampires, because I don't want to suck on some guy's neck. That weirds me out a bit. And and also like the mechanics of although innovative at the time, the mechanics of the masquerade, right? We try like we tried to play werewolf if last year or a year and a half ago with Phil, and going back to it, like the mechanics definitely did age, right, with the dice pool, and because it's
Yep.
it's kind of slow and it doesn't feel like it fits what you're trying to do in that game. It doesn't feel like it fits like. So that's my experience with the masquerade. And so see like and like I like what you said there, like, oh, people think about like how vampire should work, and because it kind of set the tone of how you should do vampire in role-playing game. But I don't know why it should, right? I think we should be able to do something else with
Yeah,
those.
and
So
I think it's kind of like if you look at different movies or TV shows about the mafia,
yeah,
each one presents a very different experience of what it would be like to be in the mafia. If you're in the mafia that is depicted in The Sopranos, right? That's going to be very different than if you're a member of organized crime in a show like The Wire, or if you're in the mafia again in like Goodfellas. Like they're very different. Each one, Goodfellas is much more um, impulsive violence, and people are caught up in it's not as intricate of plot. The guys aren't thinking as far ahead, whereas in Sopranos there's very, very complex things that are being spun up by all these guys. So everybody, and then to compare to like The Godfather or something, like totally different. So the idea that it should all work the same way within a particular genre just seems crazy to me.
it's also like
And
correct me if
yeah.
I'm wrong, because I haven't seen most of those things. I don't watch much
Oh,
TV
okay.
or
Sorry.
movie. No, it's my fault. Like I have like those huge hole in culture because I don't watch movie and TV. But from what I understand, also like the just the tone of the story told, like in Soprano, I think it's much more like personal story because like you follow this character
Yeah,
and his struggle and stuff like that in that mafia setting, while in something like Goodfellas, it's more action oriented. It's like there's not gonna be like as much. It's not gonna be as introspective. So just that also like it does. Feel it's a problem that I don't watch a movie on TV. Hey, so one day I will when I'm nearly dead, I guess. When I'm retired for real, I'll be in my bed watching movies. I'll catch up. But but yeah, and that's also like one thing like with the masquerade, where people like people would say like, and I think that's what you thought I said earlier, like when you say like people would say like, oh, you're playing a superhero. It's basically like turned into a superhero game because you have all those
yeah.
power and you want to use them, and there's no good reason to just like they wanted to tell they want to make a game about this internal struggle about like losing your humanity and stuff like that and turning into a monster and not wanting to.
That's right. And I don't want to deal with that problem. I don't want to sit around and go, oh, I'm a bad guy. And
No.
let me ruminate on my problems. I want to play a person who is impulsive and trying to solve very short term problems because they're pressing needs rather than setting up some decades long political thing that will eventually come to benefit me.
Hmm.
So I just feel like that's the kind of gameplay that results in better stories and more excitement for players at the table. So the systems that are in Shadow City push you to constantly, you're constantly under pressure. There's a ever-present threat of the mortals figuring out that you're a vampire, and just making it through one night at a time is challenging. Whereas in Masquerade, you could pass months of game time just like that, and then move on, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, I actually say in the book at some point, basically, it's going skipping over a whole night, just one night, is a bad idea because things could be happening in that one night. So the time focus is much shorter.
Yeah.
I see Elf Hunter had a question a few minutes ago about are there dungeon rounds and torch timer and carousing rules similar.
Yes, I wanted to
Um,
I like that because I think it came right
yeah,
on topic now. Yeah.
yeah. So the torch timer type thing, I don't use an actual timer in Shadow City, but it's the pressure of the mortals. There's a in Shadow Dark, there's a mishap table for when things go wrong with your light source, and in Shadow City, there's a similar mishap table for humans screwing up whatever it is you're doing, right? So the kind of this there's a similar pressure, but you're a vampire. You don't need a light source all the time, but you do need to be concealed from the humans all the time. If you get revealed, then you're screwed. So there's this pressure of humans. The GM is encouraged to constantly be introducing complications like that. So you can't just get into a shootout at 4 a.m. and unload magazine after magazine of bullets and nobody shows up. You know, nobody comes around the corner, right? Like, so the GM is told to just be constantly pushing things out so that the players have to deal with that pressure. And the game divides time into there's hours, like every night is 12 hours. You could vary that up if you were far north or far south, but generally I said that there's 12 hours, and then if you get into a fight or you go to a location that's called a site that's more like a dungeon, then you move over into rounds. But otherwise, you stay in hours. So you could be like, this whole hour I'm going to spend hunting for people and trying to get more blood. And I don't ask the players to go into detailed descriptions like you were saying creeps you out to be feeding on somebody's neck. I just it's like healing yourself with the cure light wounds. You don't describe how I'm healing you with the cure light wounds. We just go, all right, I went hunting and I got this many blood points and we're good. We're good to go. So those kind of things are abstracted away, and the focus is on territory and space control. So the game is very much like in D&D, it's about locations. So this dungeon has bad things in it. This building has people in it that are opposed to our interests. Are we going to go in and kill a bunch of them and take their stuff? Are we going to try to find some other way to deal with them as a problem? They're a rival to us, right? So the game is all about controlling territory like a predator, like a wolf pack. You're a wolf pack. You need to control this much. If you don't control enough territory, you won't get enough blood, and you'll die. Yeah, you're like you're an animal in essence, right? So the game is focused on that, just making sure that you have enough territory to feed, and then once you have that, you start protecting yourself. I need even more territory so that if I suffer a setback, then I will be okay. I need this and all the things that cause countries to build up massive arsenals and eventually go to war with each other. That those mechanics begin to kick in. This desire to control the territory leads you in your own direction. And so the game doesn't require a lot of GM led plots or designs or anything like that, because the players have their own motivation they have to satisfy at all times. I need to go. And what player is going to go, oh, I have enough blood. I'm good. I don't need any more gold pieces. I'm full of gold pieces, right? So gold pieces are their own infinite ladder, right? So it's a different thing. Yeah.
It's also something that, it's a resource that get depleted over time too, right? So
Yes.
it needs to be a constant, constantly be refreshed. Would you say that you're bringing the kind of the power level of those vampire a bit down compared to like the masquerade? Like they're more like in survival mode than, in the
Yeah.
masquerade, like they're like controlling the humans, they're above it all, like humans are kind of cattle for them, they're
Yeah.
fighting amongst each other. You make it sound much more like humans are actually a problem for the vampires. Like they're
Yeah.
actually like,
Yeah. I mean, even if you were a level 10 vampire, you can't take on the National Guard, even, much less like if real military action broke out. I mean, like if Abrams tanks are rolling down the street, your ability to turn into a bat is not really that impressive, right? You can be hit by a cruise missile. So there's the humans are this massive, uncontrollable threat. Like you aren't guiding them like pawns. Like you're trying to survive them, and almost like the way people try to survive zombies, although they are thinking and you can control them to some degree. Um, but yeah, they're relentless, and like when I was answering the wrong question earlier, the vampires in Shadow City are not strong enough to take on more than 2 or 3 people at first level. I mean, as you get better, you'll get stronger like a D&D character, but you still, I mean, Shadow Dark is kind of part of its shtick is even at like 5th,
yep.
7th level, you're still very low hit point. You're still weak. If 100 people with crowbars come at you, you're fucked. So you have to really think about that, especially when these humans could be armed with flamethrowers or shotguns or something. Like you really can't stand up. Your powers give you limited ability to evade them, just like in D&D, if you can cast invisibility, that doesn't turn you into God. It just means you have a very limited angle at which you can deceive people and maybe turn the situation in your favor, but you're not invincible because you can cast second level spells. That's a similar kind of thing. And so the vampires, it's almost like I'm a big fan of Alien as well, like the Alien RPG. And the humans are not one super powerful monster that could kill you, but there are thousands of little monsters everywhere. So it's a similar thing. Like you have to evade them not, you could take on a few of them. You could have limited success, but you can't win a war against 20 million people.
Yeah. So, and by doing so, by doing that, you're bring the power down. Also, you I guess you bring the kind of time preference like much, I guess much lower as well, like or higher, I guess, because like it's more like about dealing the thing in the immediate, right? Like you have needs now, you have goals now. You need to feed yourself. You need to find a place to hide. You need to find like you're not above it all, so it keeps you much more grounded, I guess, right?
Yeah, and willing to. One of the things in Vampire is that they have kind of, it's almost like philosophical decision points of, am I willing to do this thing that causes my humanity to drop a
Yeah.
few points? Let me think on that and decide whether my dark soul is prepared for that thing or whatever. In Shadow City, it's, I have to get out of this building in the next hour. There's guys in my way. I'm going to have to just kill them. It's not a, I'm grappling with my inner humanity. It's, I have very important needs that are today. Like you said, yeah, you're grappling with
Yeah.
it right now, and a lot of it spirals out of control. And this is what happened in several times in the playtest, is that they make a mistake, they do something, and then covering up that mistake becomes so costly to them that they become more conservative after dealing with that. If five guys see you do something and you have to then hunt those five guys down, and it takes you a while to do that and it distracts you from your other things, then the next time you're about to do so, you'll be like, make sure there's nobody around here. Much more conservative in the way that people who play D&D are always very conservative about, I'm not just going to walk boldly down this hallway. I'm
Well,
going to
depending on
be checking for traps with my stick.
yeah,
Um,
especially like
yeah,
when you in the OSR, especially like right, like it's a lot about resource management and stuff like that.
yeah,
Modern
yeah.
edition, like you got a much more bold, and they assume they're gonna have plot armor or some shit like that. I want to say thank you to my air trumpet has been struck for lightning for this $1 Australian dollar.
And then we also
Well,
had a question from Doc Flamingo. I didn't want to
yeah,
lose up there.
yeah, I had
Yeah.
it right here.
How
How
much
much
is
would you
it?
say is back into mechanics, and how much is down to established implied lore?
There's almost no established or implied lore.
Oh, I was about to ask about that.
Everything comes from the GM in a custom manner. So when you start out a new game, you roll up the city randomly. It is create. There's no backstory for the city unless you make the backstory for the city. The characters are all clanless. There's no clan system unless you introduce clans. There's a system for creating clans that the GM can use, but the players can also use it if they get strong enough as a group. They can say, we're going to form a clan, and they could give themselves a name and they could form their own clan. Um, in Shadow Dark terms, a clan is just a shared talent that everybody in the clan has. So it's not a complicated thing to come up with and negotiate with the GM. So then once you have that clan talent, it gets inherited downstream by all the vampires that you create under you. Because remember, vampires are a pyramid scheme. So the guy at the top is creating multiple kids who create multiple kids who create multiple, and it goes down. So there's no problem with having an inherited talent. It works right in, and the GM can make any organization they need, like a FBI or some kind of vampire hunting organization or neighborhood watch, whatever it is. They can just create using the same system where they create a shared talent and they just distribute that to all the people involved. And the opponents chapter in the game has a bunch of people that you can use as a template to just add that talent to. So you could take a police officer and you add the FBI talent, and now they're an FBI officer. There's no problem at all. You could take a vampire, you could add the clan talent. Now that's a vampire from that clan. So there's no lore for you to remember. That's one of the big things. A lot of stuff in
Yeah.
Vampire, people feel like there's this crushing amount of lore. Like, I don't know the whole history of the Zabiti clan, so how can I possibly fit into this situation? And the GM has to know all that lore, and the player has to know all that lore, or else you get into. And this happens in
You have those
Star
lore
Wars.
lawyer.
Yeah, this happens in Star Wars too. Like, if does the GM have to know every single thing that's been written in every Star Wars book everywhere, or else he doesn't know the real world? Like that sucks.
Yeah.
So there's no lore, and so it can't affect you. Everything you do becomes the lore of that game that you're playing. It's not something everybody else has to know.
It become like campaign specific. I like that approach much more because that's like you said, like I always thought that was a big problem because like people talk about rule lawyer, but also like lore lawyers are a real
Yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah.
When you
Lore,
like you have
lore
like those lore
lawyers is
nerds, yeah.
a big thing. Yes.
Yeah, and then the GM is gonna introduce something and say, "Oh, actually, in that setting, like this worked this way," and shut the fuck up, nerds! Like, just fucking play the game. Just live in that campaign in that setting that we're doing now. There's gonna be like discrepancy with the from the meta and shit like that. But hearing you reply to those questions, right? Like, it feel like it's the comparison to to Vampire the Masquerade is almost unfair. Like you basically the only thing you have in common is like there's the vampire in that kind of modern setting.
Yep. I have
And-
to I have to kind of use it as a baseline because a lot of people otherwise
yeah,
I would have to define everything all over again. And there's certain like I use the term ghouls to describe the same thing as in Vampire the Masquerade. You're feeding some blood to a guy and he gets charged up a little bit beyond normal human capability, but he then becomes dependent on you for regular blood. So
yeah,
um, those kind of concepts I've kept in place, but I have, yeah, you're right. I've mixed in a ton of stuff. It's been weird pitching the game a lot of times because people's, like I said, their conception of how it's going to work from Masquerade is not what it's like at all. It's almost, I think I've said this in a couple places. It's like playing Grand Theft Auto as a vampire. Like, you can go anywhere you want. You get into these fights. You're trying to control territory like you're a gang, right? All of a sudden, you could just pull out guns and have a huge gunfight in the street. You go into buildings and explore those buildings and try to find something valuable in those. Like it plays like that, much more so than playing like the way Vampire Masquerade game normally goes.
hmm yeah. Like because if you take away the clans, you take away like those rules, you take away like this philosophical kind of like wonkery, I guess. Then like yeah, it feel like you're doing your own thing, and I think that's good, right? It's like not trying to oh, we're gonna adapt this lore and this setting, but try to without the rights. Uh, because I've never been a fan too of this kind of philosophical kind of like, oh, I'm a vampire, but I'm trying to be a good guy still, right? And I always thought it was funny, like that's gonna be an aside, but I always thought it was funny that like vampire should be the one embracing their monstrous side, especially like in the way they're depicted there, because they're so powerful and stuff like that. They should be ruling over the world, right? And werewolf in the world of darkness are the one that are like embracing their monstrous side and see themselves as good guy and stuff like that. While
Yeah.
there should be the one traditionally werewolf should be the one dealing with the, oh, I have the beast inside of me that I have a hard time controlling. They kind of flipped it on a in a sense that anyway.
Well, in Shadow City, I use a humanity mechanic, but it
Yeah.
works very differently from humanity in Masquerade. So it goes across the zero. It's a +3 to -7 scale, and it's a double-edged sword. So when players are approaching it, there's no good end, there's no bad end of it. The going below -7 is technically bad in that you become an NPC. You're so uncontrollable that you're better off run as an NPC. But anywhere between +3 and -7, whatever the number is, it's applied as a modifier on your reaction rolls. So the more monstrous you become, the more humans pick up on that. And I mean, I've run into some pretty low humanity people in New York and Chicago, just as a tourist, right? I don't think they were vampires, but the reaction penalty was pretty steep because they were not coming across as very human, right? It's like just kind of aggressive, belligerent homeless people. Um, but the flip side is that whatever the number is, the inverse is applied as a combat bonus. So if you want the good reaction bonus, you're going to be taking a combat penalty to hit. If you want the good, if you want to be good at fighting, you're going to become more and more monstrous and unrelatable to people. So that, but there's no, like I said, there's no, that's not good or bad. Being one or the other, it doesn't matter. You're a vampire. Like there's no morality in it for you, technically. It's like, I need to stop being such a creep so that these people will treat me like a normal person. I need to sneak into this place. I can't walk up and have them think I'm a psychotic murderer, right? I need to. That's a perspective of deceit. It's not. You're not trying to be good. You're just trying to put on the face of being good to these people.
And approaching it in that way, like it allows the players to explore their own, decide for their own moral quandary that their character are gonna face, I guess, right? Like instead of instead of forcing somebody, it's like, oh no, your character is gonna be dealing with this kind of moral quandary. To say no, there's this mechanic that exists, and inside and through those mechanics, you can express like however you want to be, right? Like you say, like you could have like a character that say like, well, I'm just something acting as human because I want to pass as human, not because I care for human. But you could also have a character that would kind of still care for human, I guess, right? Just like they're
Yeah. Like I know guys that will act like selfish asshole jerks, and I
yeah,
know they're not, but they're acting like that because women respond differently to selfish asshole jerks than they do guys who are super nice and polite.
that's.
And it,
But are women
who,
human?
yeah,
That's
who they are underneath is not who they're projecting. They're just projecting that because it's like a hunter. Like that's what the prey will respond to a particular way.
yeah,
they don't care either way. Yeah. And so I think a lot of times we get caught up in the morality of
yeah.
as if this creature which lives in a totally different way from us would have the same moral concerns as we do. And in Vampire, there's all this focus on being damned and being cursed and all these things like that. But I think of it as just they're an animal who no longer sees us as kin animals. They see us as something to prey on, right? And the same way, we don't care about the sheep's feelings, right? I mean, some people do, but I mean, like, we want the lamb chop. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the sheep wants. So once they've moved over that boundary and they don't care about those things anymore, I would actually expect a vampire character if it was all real. I would expect that they would have much more affinity for your cat that I keep seeing moving in the background than they would for you, because they can eat, and the cat is just some kind of art object to them. So if somebody killed the cat, they'd be really pissed off. But if you got shot, they'd just be like, it'd be like if I threw a sandwich on the floor, they'd be like, why did you waste that sandwich? But they're not crying over the sandwich. But if you killed that cat, they might be real pissed. They might kill you over that, right? Because they're putting emotions in a different location. You're their prey, and other things are, they might not give a shit about chickens. You could have a million. They don't care because they don't eat chickens. It's no longer a problem for them. So that things like that, they would have a different mentality. And furthermore, I think we talked about this on Crispy Street. There's an apocalypse counter. So these people are living on borrowed time. They know they're going to die. The question is like, how long can they get out of this situation? And eventually the humans are going to figure out that they're real and try to kill them. So as the pressure ratchets up, they're going to be willing to do all kinds of things that from a moral perspective they might not normally do, but they're like, survival's on the line. I'm going to have to kill these people because I have to make sure that I survive. It doesn't matter how I feel about it.
Is that part of the reason, like, because like I know like you kind of said it like in the 80s, and I know like you have a reason about like aesthetic reason for that, but also like in the 80s, the time before the internet, before like
Yes.
everybody got a cell phone and stuff like that, and you talk about like let's how long before human figure out it's true, right? Like where the vampire exists and stuff like that. I guess now with modern technology, that would be like accelerated quite a bit, right? It's like nowadays,
Yeah.
like people like have their eyes open on a bunch of stuff that have been lied for like 80 years or some shit, right? Just like,
Yeah. And I said in the book that the only actual true thing about being a vampire is that if you get staked, you will be paralyzed. Other than that, like you show up on cameras, you show up in
mm,
mirrors, you can walk into people's houses without being invited. Garlic just is a spice. Um, None of that stuff works on you. So if cameras keep improving and surveillance keeps improving, they will eventually figure out that vampires are real, and then they'll just kill them.
mhm.
Just like we've wiped out wolves and other animals from where people live. That's just how it is. So every time you screw up to a very large degree, if more than 2,000 people kind of observe the thing that got screwed up, then you also move down the apocalypse timer. So there's a technology effect. If you're perfect, then the apocalypse will be in I think it's 2031. But if you screw up a bunch, it could be in 2001. I mean, who knows? Um, and every time you go to sleep and a certain number of people have seen something they shouldn't have, when you wake up the next night, double that many people are now aware of it. So it just keeps double. So the longer you don't deal with that guy who saw you do some vampire power, he keeps telling people, they keep spreading the word. Eventually it gets out, like, so there's very much like I was saying, like the pressure of mortals all around you constantly trying to figure out that you're a vampire is the real enemy over time.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Like the way like you're oftentimes like I'm a big one shot guy, right? Or like a few shot micro campaign, like very very micro campaign. But that's almost like feel like you would very much benefit from like a bit of a longer campaign, like, and longer by my terms would be like 16 sessions some shit.
Yeah.
I don't like
I
the
ran a Adventure Conquer King 2 campaign for every week for over 9 months while
yeah.
the Kickstarter was. We started playing as soon as we got the PDF when the Kickstarter closed, when it didn't even have art in it, and played for So I'm there with you. I love to have a really really long campaign.
Yeah.
My Saturday night group is not as into vampire as me, so I have to just kind of pick up games on the side.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going to replace my friends of 15 years. I'm sure you know how that. Yeah, I guess like if they don't want to play it, then I'll play it and I'll play it at a convention or I'll play it somewhere else. I'll play it with another group. But yeah, it could be a long campaign. I've been trying to think of short scenarios to run in like a convention setting as a one shot and be just like you five people. You're vampires. There's a rival vampire that's in this location, and it gets mapped out in the game as a node map, but it's basically a dungeon map.
Mm-hmm.
and say he's in this dungeon somewhere. So it's like you're attacking a warehouse or a high rise or a harbor or whatever it is, wherever you're going, and you got to fight your way through and get the thing and get out, just like a D&D adventure. Go in, kill the guy, and take the gold.
You could also have a scenario about like a rogue vampire, I guess, that doesn't care about consequence and being exposed and stuff like that, and all you have to deal with is mess because it's gonna
That's
affect you
right.
as well.
Yeah.
Some sort, yeah, yeah, I could see that, right? No, like, what was the
If the
impetus? Like,
players if the players become that vampire, then the other NPC vampires will just kill them.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. So that's its own threat. Like if they screw up, it's not just a threat to everybody, but the guy who is level 8 is not going to tolerate a bunch of level 1s possibly getting him killed. He's going to come and start whacking you guys.
tell me, like, Chubby, what was the impetus of like making this game in a sense? Because like at first I assume that, oh, you probably like played the Masquerade like back in the days. You realize the mechanics were a bit clunky and a bit too heavy and stuff like that. So you say, I'm gonna make my own spin. But now that I'm like what you did, like it doesn't seem like that's what it is because it's so different and it's so like it's in a sense a fresh take on vampire because the role playing world has been so locked into this like masquerade kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Paradigm, I guess, would be the
Yeah.
word.
Paradigm. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're going away from that. So what was the thing? Like, you just wanted to have like a? Was it like inspired by movies? Was it like just like
Uh,
I just want a modern
it was
game with like
really inspired,
some
I guess,
power?
ultimately from the video game Vampire Bloodlines on
Oh,
PC. It's fantastic game, and people will act like it's an idea coming from a video game. That sucks, but you might watch a movie for an hour and a half or 2 hours, but you'll play a video game for 60 70 hours. Like really pour the time. The amount of lore that you get, focus on a video game is huge. And I love Vampire Bloodlines, and it does not play like Vampire the Masquerade. It is a dungeon crawling adventure. You move from location to location and go through these dungeon crawls and get stuff and become more powerful. And there's times when you make story decisions, so to speak, but mostly it's an action adventure RPG. And the disconnect between all the things that I love about that game and how I actually experienced Vampire at the Table so big that I've had for over 10 years. I've had tons of ideas that I have
yeah,
multiple folders. I have a graveyard folder of all the things that have kind of been specced out but never finished. And I have multiple vampire games in there that like I just couldn't make it work. I didn't make it, the things didn't connect in a way that I liked. And then when I was working on the book for ShadowDark called the GM Companion,
mm-hmm.
in ShadowDark, there is a district creating system for making towns. So you roll the dice on the table, and you might get a market and a slum and a temple and like a fighters guild, whatever. Like, and that's your town for ShadowDark. And I was writing this book for it, and I was trying to turn every D10 table into a D20 table, turn all these things and maximize out the amount of options. And I kept trying to come up with all these different ideas for districts. And I realized that you could use this system to make a city randomly every time in the way that eventually become the method in ShadowCity. And once I had that, it solved such an enormous amount of the problems that I'd had over the years of creating a city with no lore. You don't have to know anything about Chicago or New Orleans or whatever. You can make the city fresh. It's a fictional city. Everything is just whatever the GM wants it to be, and the stuff gets built out randomly. The node mapping system to create locations. Any building the PCs want to go in, you can just build out a node map using a random system, and fill it up like stocking dungeon rooms, and then you've got a building. And creating it like that solves so many problems. And I went back, I went through all the notes I'd made over the years and found ways of taking the best ideas from those other failed ideas and put them into this one, build it up over time. So it's kind of an accretion of all of the thought that I've had about Vampire over a long period of time. And the Black Lodge Games guys, they have a video about running a vampire game like the Mafia.
Yeah.
And that also I had a profound impact on me in terms of making it a territory struggle where it's almost like you're running a gang, and that other gang is on that corner and we need to kill those guys and take the corner, right? Like it turns it into that. And it has come to be, like you said, like it's so different from Vampire the Masquerade, but it's hard to describe in just a few sentences how
It's also
different it is.
there's this idea of like a mafia, I guess, in like the Black Lodge games say in the Vampire Masquerade, but the mafia is like a very well established. They're on top. They have their network. It's very like stable, kind of like crime
Oh,
structure.
you're
It's
starting
very
Mafia. Yeah.
yeah. But it's almost like feel like more the way you describe it. It almost feel like a street gang, almost like that they
Yeah.
aspire to becoming the mafia, but they're not there yet, right? Exactly. And I think that's more interesting in a sense because
I've
it's
always
more
loved the levels 1 to 3 kind of power level. And once you get over level 4 or 5 and you start casting spells like Fireball or whatever it is for the system that you're in, you get so powerful that you stop dealing with the problems in a physical way and you start dealing with everything as if it's you have a magic power to solve that problem. The guy who's a 9th level wizard, he sees all of his problems as solvable by this collection of all these powerful spells that he's accumulated. Whereas the 1st level wizard is like, they are happy that they found a pitchfork so that they can find some way to use that pitchfork to their advantage. They're intimately connected to the world's reality. Whereas the powerful character in any system, and this is why I don't hardly ever play superhero games, because they're just so powerful that the problems that you're dealing with are fantastical and difficult to even imagine. Whereas we have to find a way to get through this locked window. That's a real practical problem that will get you some good, fun gameplay out of.
I agree with you on that 100%. And I like games that have like a shallower also power curve, right? Oh yeah, you're gonna get more powerful, but you're not gonna get like 100 times more powerful, like 10 times more powerful.
Yeah,
you're gonna be like slowly. And yeah, I like also like when it's much closer to something like we can connect to as people, because like for me that's the big thing, right? Like when I say like I told you like, I'm big into role play, and for me that's what I want, is to be able like to slip myself into the skin of this character that I'm playing and experience what it is to be that guy that is not me, right? And dealing with those problems, I want to feel like I'm there. I want to have this emotional alignment. And if it's so alien and so big, it's harder to do that. So what you're describing there, like I feel like a lot of it is and also like the fact that there's no lore to know. You don't, everything is like for the co-creation that we like to do, that seemed to be would work very well as well. You just come in and you make the city as you go, basically, like, right? You're just like, oh, this is the city for this campaign, and we can discover it together. And you can, like, the GM could leave some leeway for the player to interact some stuff as well, if they interject some stuff as well. I don't see why it would be a problem.
There's a real strong alternative style, which I'm not sure how familiar you are with the guys that call themselves the Bro SR.
Yeah.
But yeah, they run these Bronstein style games where the players are in control of either factions or groups of NPCs that are PvP against each other. So they're not all on the same team. So the guy who's running this gnome town or whatever, he is an enemy of the other people. Technically, he's not. They're not part of the same party, and they are engaged in opposed actions that get adjudicated through the GM. And I feel like you could roll up a city and then hand out the neighborhoods to powerful characters,
Mhm.
and the players could just decide what those characters have built in that neighborhood already, using some guidelines or whatever. But you say, this is the level 8 vampire who controls 3 neighborhoods. He's going to have a distinct personality. That personality is going to be infused in those neighborhoods. You're going to see his way of running it, and then another player could do that for a different set of neighborhoods. And um, Dundermoose was a guy who I talked to about it on a live stream, and I hadn't even thought of this as much as I read. I try to read a lot of what the Broasar does because it's interesting. I don't play that way, but it's very interesting. And he was saying, well, what would probably happen is we would have these high level characters make all that stuff, and then we would play as the subordinate characters to that high level vampire. So it's not like they're playing in his shoes. They're kind of deciding what he would do, and then they're all his lackeys, and they're trying to implement his vision in some way. So that fits right into Vampire with ghouls and the way you can dominate humans and force them to do what you want. Things like that. You could play as all ghouls
Mhm.
if you wanted.
Yeah, we have a very different approach in the USR, but like what are you describing? Like seem to would probably fit as well. Like very much so. Uh, we probably wouldn't like roll the city like up front, like because we would like let it like be discovered and created as we play, right? True play, basically. Like you
Oh,
don't
you
really
could do
see,
that, yeah.
know, yeah, you don't necessarily know every neighborhood until you need to go there, right? It's like, oh, there's a slum, I guess, because now we need to go to a slum. Right? It doesn't matter. It's reasonable. It's there. It's expected. So that's probably the way we would go for it. What's the expected life expectancy of a vampire, or the in that
It's pretty short.
sound
Because,
like it? Yeah.
yeah, because you're more, like I said, earlier, you're more robust than a human, but not that much. And the main ability that you have is healing, not being strong already. So you might have 2 or 3 times as many hit points as a person, but a couple of firearms will bring that down real quick.
Hmm.
And if you get shot with a you know AK-47 and then you stand back up fully healed, that's going to be its own problem that you've just created.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of threats, and you can roll up a new character in 5 minutes. So I say it's just like playing an OSR game. If you die, you die. Like that's it, and just make yourself a new character. You don't have to agonize over it for 45 minutes to an hour, putting dots on a page and thinking about how you're gonna distribute things and make decisions. Like you can make a new character with no decisions really, just rolling every single thing randomly. You could roll your
Hmm.
bloodline randomly, you could roll your class randomly, you can roll all your stats randomly, of course. um, you might have to make a few equipment purchases, but that's it. Everything else would be random. um, and that means that if you die, it's okay. Like there's no problem.
And
You can come back as another character.
you probably don't see like those like vampire are still immortal. Like so there's like the no aging kind of thing.
They are immortal, but there there's a guy who did kind of actuarial math and figured out that even if you were immortal, you'd probably only live about 800 years before you had a sufficiently large accident that you would die anyway.
Yeah.
He was looking at like accidental death and dismemberment tables for actuaries. So he's like, eventually you're going to get hit by a truck, you're going to get hit by a bus, whatever, and then there's no way, like you're not going to
Yeah.
make it out of that. So even if you're immortal, you really aren't truly immortal.
Yeah.
Even if you had spaceships, you could, eventually a technical problem could cause your spaceship to explode. I mean, you're going to die. Like, but yeah, technically, they live forever in a classical vampire sense. They don't
Yeah.
age.
But you
Um,
probably don't encounter like a lot of like 500-year-old vampires, some shit
I
like that.
wouldn't think so. No,
Yeah,
because
it doesn't
if
sound
you
like it the way
did,
you're describing it.
you'd be the smartest motherfucker in the world.
And
You would
that's
be
the other
so-
point. That's the other point I wanted to bring out. Like, and it seemed like if you wanted to live a very long time as a vampire, what you would need is to be smart, not necessarily just be powerful and have a lot of like yeah, like you
yeah.
see, like when you're saying that, and that's exactly the read I got from your description of the world and the mechanics and stuff like that. So I guess you're probably achieving your goal there.
Well, I'm very big on verisimilitude and things making sense.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of times people, especially this is huge in medieval fantasy, that they'll say that there's somebody who can heal almost any problem you have in every town all across the whole world. Well, like the social impact of doing that
yeah.
would be enormous. It would change the whole dynamic of everything. I've always thought it was, crazy that you would have people living in the most brutal circumstances with goblins right outside of town ready to murder them, but they don't change anything about their mentality, and they act like they're a farmer in a world where there is no such thing.
I often say like
Um,
even like a spell like a prestidigitation, right? When you can
that's
suddenly make something clean. It's like even it, like and that's a cantrip that you can do as much as you want. Like even those spell which change society, like very low level
oh
spell,
my
right?
god,
Level
yeah,
zero spell, which change society completely. And if you have like those spell that basically anybody can learn because like you don't have any prerequisite to be a wizard, and that's
that's
level zero
right, yeah,
spell, right? It's like then the whole society would be organized to have as many people as learning those spells as possible, right? Like
that's yeah.
that's never like accounted for. So I'm on you with that, right? It drives me mad.
Well, like I actually, I mean, I don't implement this because people hate it, but in medieval fantasy, I actually think that the number one way that things would be defended is not with castles, because castles only make sense if you can't fly.
Yeah.
Um, but would be extensive kind of mound defenses. Like you'd be building things and then covering them up with all this dirt in order to protect you, because otherwise a dragon would just come and
So,
destroy whatever it is, or a harpy or whatever. There's so many flying creatures. Like building a
but
castle has almost no defensive value.
basically what you're saying there would be like underground dungeon.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Maybe that's the reason why there's all those underground dungeon everywhere
but
because
then
people
people
can.
wouldn't be living out in the castles. But
No,
people really love castles. They really
yeah,
do, and they
it
want to
should.
build them, and they want to go, see them on the horizon, and they want to have interactions with it. So I don't take it out, but it's the same reason. Like I have a hard time getting into zombies as a concept,
Yeah.
because I know how a spear works. And so all you need to do is make a boar spear with a crossbar, and you could fight off hundreds and hundreds of zombies. I mean, they'd be crazy the amount of zombies you could fight off just as one person with a boar spear. And
With 5 people, right? Like
yeah,
with a like a
yeah,
spear and a shield. So
exactly. If you had
the
five
shield
people,
wall.
if you had 5 people with like Saxon technology, you could
Yeah.
hold off hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
zombies. So yeah, I mean it's crazy, but you have to just let that stuff go, because people get all into whatever it is, and I don't want to crap all their favorite fantasy or
Yeah.
whatever, but it just doesn't make sense. I live in Georgia, and it is extensive temperate woodland. I mean there are small trees everywhere, and the idea that Walking Dead would take place in Georgia and nobody would make a spear for the entire length of the show, as like 9, 10 seasons or whatever. And I could make 50 spears in one day just within walking distance of my house. Like, I would have Shiltrom defenses against these
Yeah.
zombies like right away. It would be no problem. But
Yeah, like
yeah,
a zombie infection would be solved like
I
within a week.
yes, no problem. It's no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the kind of thing you shouldn't like talking about a zombie. Like what you mentioned like a werewolf. So what else do you have in that game? You have like a not necessarily as playable character, like but like a
Yeah, there's monsters
supernatural
basically.
being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's I think it's 6 or 7 categories, and then there's monsters within each category. So like there's an angels category, and there's kind of like a winged avenging type angel monster, but then there's also like the beggar that has a cowl and hood, and they're kind of going around helping people like Mother Teresa and healing people. Like, so it's not like in a lot of the vampire lore. I tried to make it as flexible with some other ideas. There's also there's a demon category, and the demons, of course, will kill you. They don't care about you. You're also worthless to them, and their power. Their goal is to corrupt the people, and that might or might not intersect with your plans, right? The angels aren't really there to deal with you; they're there to deal with demons. So there's those 2 categories. There's mages and werewolves, like in Vampire the Masquerade. There's I think 5 or 6 different mage categories that have like an enchanting type mage and a witch type mage and stuff like that. And then the werewolf is kind of like a super predator, like the dragon of the setting, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's cool.
then there's vampires themselves. There's multiple entries in there for different kinds of vampires to run into as opponents. Then there's mortals, and it has everything from like a criminal or a police officer to religious fanatics, inquisitors, stuff like that. And then there's an animal category, which is like guard dogs. If you're in like the American South, you could put in alligators, some different stuff that might be appropriate. If you're running Miami,
Yeah.
you probably want to put a few alligators in somewhere, or New Orleans, whatever. So all those categories have multiple entries within them that you could pick from, and those are flooded through all the encounter tables also. So you could there's an encounter table for each neighborhood, 20 different neighborhood types. So you're in the airport district, you neighborhood, you roll an encounter, and you might get any of those monsters. You might get uh, an interesting non-combat encounter. I don't think every random encounter should be hostile. uh, there's a lot of things on there, like you stumble on a couple of teenagers that are making out in a secluded place. Like, what do you do? Are you going to try to feed on them? Are you going to, what do they see you doing something? Because a lot of the random encounter will depend on what you're doing. If you're carrying one guy on each shoulder, and you're walking along, and then you see these 2 teenagers, and they see that you've murdered 2 people, like that becomes its own problem. So a lot of the encounters are open ended for the GM to just adapt to the situation, and there's very strong GM support to make it so they can adapt to whatever you're doing. The GM doesn't have to lead you and constantly be telling you that this is happening and you should be doing this, and are you going to investigate this little carrot over here, and you're going to do this over here. Like, the players should be carrying a lot of that weight themselves from a game design perspective, because of all their own goals. The players should have their own
Yeah.
significant goals. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Big agree on that. Do you have like a supernatural hunter and stuff like that? Like like the Buffy type or whatever. Like
There is a vampire hunter in the mortal category, and there's an inquisitor, which is kind of like a super hunter, but they don't. I mean, they're not ninjas that can fight you with massive
Yeah.
kung fu or something. Yeah, like they're just regular people, but they are aware that vampires are real, and they have like a crossbow and a stake. You know.
Like this James Wood movie. What is it
Yeah.
called? Like when James Carpenter, like it's called Vampires. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a huge
I
range. I
guess
think it's
sunlight. I guess would still kill vampire, right? You say like the only
yes.
thing was a snake, sunlight
One
too.
of one of the bloodlines, which is kind of like your biological bonuses and penalties. One of them is a vagrant, which travels around, and they have, I think it's a half or a quarter damage from sunlight. I can't remember because this is one of the terrible things about
Yeah.
writing games.
I
At
know.
one point, it was one number, and at another point, it changed to a different
Yeah.
number. And I can't remember which direction it changed, and that's the problem. But
I don't know how you feel,
yeah,
man. You change
it
rules and
happens
like
all the time.
he was that at some point. Like it's, it's
Yeah,
something else.
it was maybe it was a quarter and it moved to a half or the reverse. I can't remember. So the vagrant has enough of a resistance that if they get caught out in the sun, like they could survive long enough to get to a safe place.
Okay.
But it's not absolute immunity like Blade or something. Yeah.
Yeah. What is there like movies that specifically like, inspired you and stuff like that? In the tone, in
Not
the
any
setting, in
movie
the
in
power?
particular.
Not any movie in particular. It's really like just this video game bloodline.
I've watched a lot of vampire movies, but there's no vampire movie that is like genre defining, crushing for me, because each movie kind of tries to present a different type of way of being a vampire. Like the vampires in Blade are totally different from the vampires in uh, Interview with a Vampire, and those are totally different from the vampires in Underworld or something, right? Like so, they're very different takes on vampires, and so I'd say probably Underworld is my favorite vampire focused movie. But I would probably prefer to watch Blade if I had a choice between the two, because I love the action and the combat more than the intrigue and the politics of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like
I
the
go to the say that
Underworld.
again.
I feel that Underworld. It's probably like one of the vampire movie that's like more inspired in the lore by the Masquerade.
Yeah,
Than
I'd say it's
like
probably the
those old.
closest. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
but
that they tried
that
to.
goes to the whole difference in how the game is set up. I mean, this game is set up to be
Listen,
a
your dog.
brutal combat location crawler rather than a
Yeah.
political drama,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe that a part of that is I just don't care about people's feelings about being a vampire. I care about what they're doing as a vampire. How I'm always intrigued. This is even about billionaires and people that aren't vampires but are just have a enormous amount of resources. I'm always disappointed in how they use their immense amount of resources. Yeah. I've got $80 million. I've got $5 billion. I'm going to buy 50 automobiles and put them in a giant garage, and I'm going to build a huge house that I don't even use that
So
much.
boring. Yeah.
And I just like it's so disappointing. And there's people like Kevin Costner, who some movies that he's in I like, some movies I don't like. Whatever, that doesn't matter. What I love about him is that he didn't give a shit about what anybody else wanted him to do. He was like, I'm going to make Waterworld. I'm going to make The Postman. I'm going to make these movies that nobody else would pay for, and I'm just going to pay for them myself because that's what I want to do. And I wish that more of these people with all this wealth and power would use it in some creative way to do a cool thing. Instead, they're like, I'm going to do the same thing that every other billionaire is doing. Like, that sucks, man.
Yep.
I go back, and I'm a huge Roman Empire fan, And in the early empire, like Scipio Africanus, he made tons of wealth and power in his campaign against Carthage, and he returns home to Rome and uses it to build all these cool buildings and temples and stuff. And he gives about, like, he wasn't like, I'm going to build a massive villa for myself and just sit in it. You know, he built all this cool stuff like that. You know, civic coolness. I wish we could bring back. Yeah, we don't have
Or
it. So
just like
when I look
weirdness
at
too. Like do
vampires,
something weird. You have like all this money. Like do something.
yeah, do something cool. Yeah, but they don't. They just do the same. So when I think about vampires, I think about all the things that I would do if I had infinite time and
Yeah.
energy. I say the same thing about elves. You know, if you could live forever, and elves don't even need to sleep. Vampires need to sleep. Elves are up 24 hours a day. The shit that they could accomplish
Yeah.
in a 24-hour workday, like
They have
holy
to.
crap. Yeah.
They have
I
they
mean,
have
and
trees
what,
to look at
yeah.
to look grow. They
Yeah,
have to look at
what do they do?
trees growing.
They all of them
This
are doing the same thing. There's
the
no
procrastinator.
creativity. Oh my
They
god.
are but that's also a thing, right? If you have like a lot of time, it's very easy to procrastinate.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's true.
But so I think that's kind of the curse of the elves, right? Like they don't have this urgency of doing stuff. Like they can, I'll get to it sometime, and sometime can be like in 50 years, right? Just like for them, it's just like just like I don't know if you've seen like the anime, like what is it called, like
The Frerin, yeah, the
Frieren?
demons.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's about this elf like that has like this totally like distorted notion of time, and she see her friend dying because like for her it's just like a blink of an eye, and for them it's the whole lifetime, right? It's like
yep.
so. I think that's a
I get it.
really good one for as far as animes goes. Falcon was asking, is it possible to solo play?
It
Yes, I
definitely is. I haven't tried to do it. I have had so many other things on my plate, but Mike Scuddifer, Scuddifer Mike is his YouTube channel name, I think. He's done a lot of solo play stuff. He has a copy of the book, and he's said he is working on a video at some point to show how to do solo play. Um, it's
and because you have a lot of table in it, it
yeah,
seemed like
all the
you have
tables
to-
and stuff. You could definitely do it. I
Mhm.
just haven't had time to do it personally. But it's definitely a viable path. If I did it, the thing is, like, I wouldn't, if I just played it solo and I didn't tell anybody about it, I would feel like I was wasting my time. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to film it and I'm going to make videos and show, like, this is how I did it. So that may come down the pipe at some point in the future, but
Yep.
it's just not there right now.
By the way, your the link to your YouTube channel is in the description below as well, with the
Awesome. Thank
Kickstarter.
you.
So for people like people go watch and subscribe. Um, Before we wrap up, I want to ask you like, do you know what's next after you're done with this? Do you know like do you
Yes.
have any other like? Yes,
Yes.
there you go.
I've written two settings for Shadow Dark. One of them is like a Dark Sun type of dark, terrible world where magic corrupts everything. And another one that is like Skyrim, very much like Skyrim.
Yeah, my hometown.
Those are two of my favorite settings. And I feel like there's never going to be even if they tried, but they're not going to try, but there's never going to be an attempt by Wizards of the Coast in the case of Dark Sun, or Bethesda in the case of Skyrim, to make a game as an OSR version that I like. Right? If they did do it, like Skyrim has some games that have been made, I don't like them at all. So I made those settings because I wanted to play those settings with Shadow Dark, not with some weird system that you need special dice to play, or all kinds of expensive minis that they have IP over, or whatever. So, or Wizards of the Coast would just destroy Dark Sun and remove all the cool parts of it because it's problematic. So
Yep.
I made both of those. So the next thing in line for me, similarly, is to do something like that with Al Qadim, which is in the same place. Al-Qadim, for all of its artifacts of being produced in the 80s and things like that, is a spectacularly imaginative setting.
Yeah.
And it, to some degree, accurately reflects what it would be like in medieval Islam. There's a system of like the bond of salt. There's ideas about fate and faith and all these things. There's how social structures are organized, things like that. All those things Wizards of the Coast hates and would never bring back at all. So I'm working on a setting that is an Islamic fantasy setting, but it's not just Arabian. Like Al-Qadim is very heavily focused on Arabia. It includes ideas from Islamic Persia, Cordoba, the Caspian Sea basin, some of the Caucasus, Anatolia, northern India, all the way down into Indonesia. And so there's a whole part of the map that is like Indonesia. And I've built out all kinds of new monsters, new cultural attitudes. I've even, it's not a perfect version of Islam. It's got a whole bunch of fantasy elements to it. So, like, I just recently finalize, something, you leave something kind of partially done for a while, and then you come back and you like finalize. This is how it's going to work. And I created a system for how they view the self. It's called the sevenfold self. So it has kind of like a bit of a Buddhist element to it, but it's also got Islam, and it's got an Egyptian element to it. The ancient Egyptians thought that the soul had different components, and that's why they put them in different jars when they were embalming people. So there's 7 elements that make you a human, and that's why humans are the best in the setting, right? That their religion, humans are the ones who have dominion over the earth. Humans are the best because we have all 7 of these elements. There's dwarves are missing one of the elements. Elves are missing one of the elements, stuff like that. And I've played up the monstrousness of the demi-humans. So like the dwarves live in a region called the Dwarven Barrens. And it's because nobody wants to live there because the dwarves come up at night and just destroy everything and rip everything out and take it down underground. So the dwarves are just malicious psychos in a way. The elves are very similar, but at high altitude in the Himalayan type mountain range that's in the setting. So you can't play as those things. So it's all humans. And there's a lot longer production cycle on things like that because you can't use all the stock art of like an elven ranger because nobody can be an elf. It has to all be humans, and they have to be wearing something that could be an Islamic outfit of one of these cultures. And there's a lot of this stuff where it's clearly Western European. I just can't use it. So I'm commissioning art for that. I'm building out the writing and the monsters and stuff like that. A lot of monsters I'm going to have to make custom because they're just not in the Western stock art style. So things like that, things that's been building out. It's probably going to be another 3 or 4 months, but that is definitely the next path for me. And I'm including a lot of the things in there that Wizards of the Coast would hate. Things like it accurately depicts what it's like to have polyamorous clan structures. So there's like a patriarch of your clan, and he has a bunch of wives, and those wives create children that are part of the clan, and extensive clan structures like that. And most Westerners are not familiar with how this stuff even works. But it's a real. Over half of the world is organized this way in the base of their culture. So, but Wizards of the Coast won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. So I'm building out things like that.
I think that's interesting you going this way because like I mentioned like for me like what I get from role playing, right, is like that I like to slip into the skin of this other guy that is not me and trying to experience the world through his eyes, right? And I feel like it's a great way also to develop your empathy. And when people are so scared of touching those kind of topics because like, oh, it's a different culture and stuff like that, then well, then we don't have those kind of products coming out, right? Like you're never gonna have like an Arabian setting unless it would be like a Arabian like or Middle Eastern setting or whatever, like unless Islamic setting, unless it'd be an Islamic guy doing it, because like people always, oh no, it's cultural appropriation, stuff like that, but like they're not doing it. So
Yeah, that's
somebody
that's
else.
my number one criticism of people who talk about cultural appropriation is
Yeah,
what they're asking you for is for nobody to ever talk
yeah,
about that culture. So I'm a
yes,
huge fan
exactly.
of there's a TV show called Longmire. I'm going to assume you haven't watched it. Yeah. So so Longmire is a sheriff in Wyoming or Montana, I can't remember. I think it's Wyoming. And
Same
there's
thing.
a huge Native American reservation right next to his town, and he is best friends with a Native American from that reservation, and they basically they solve crimes working together and apart, right?
Mhm.
And the show brings in all of these ideas from Native American culture and things like that. And somebody could sit up and say, oh, it's, how dare the author who isn't Native American include all of these Native American ideas? But that show has distributed those ideas to more people
Yeah,
than that complaining person could ever even imagine. And
and
so their real goal is for people to not talk about anything
yeah,
else, except it's the most, racist of all views of you can't talk about any other culture except our culture. Like that's the most
and our
imperialistic
culture, to be
view.
fair, you have to talk about it badly too. You
That's
can
right.
only, like,
Yes.
when you
Yes.
watch, you only are allowed to talk about European culture and only about allowed to talk about it badly. So,
That's right. And if I accurately depict what it's like to be in a clan in medieval
yeah,
Islam, and their reaction is that's horrible, then that's
yeah,
their judgment of that thing. I'm not putting it in there because I think it's horrible.
yeah.
I'm putting it in there because I think it's interesting.
And that's
It's
the thing. Like, if
interesting
you
to
want to,
have a society like that.
if you want to depict it in an authentic way, you have to be able to depict it with like warts and all too, right? Like you cannot only like
That's
make it
right.
like a romanticized, perfect view that, oh no, they were so advanced with this medicine and they had books and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
It's but
Well,
like,
these same people would want you to depict medieval England in the most brutal,
yeah,
horrific, bad faith impression
yeah,
of England as possible to make them seem like monsters.
yeah,
Um, so it's just that they're hateful people who don't want to know anything. I can't
yeah,
remember who it was, but there was some commentator. I heard this like 10 years ago, but it stuck with me as multiculturalism used to mean learning about other cultures, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, that British archaeologist who went over to that country, he might have done some bad things, but his goal was to understand and learn about those people and
yeah,
bring us some knowledge about it. Would we rather have not done any of that? And we
yeah,
don't know what these people are like or have done anything. We don't know anything about their culture. We don't know anything. Like, I would rather be somebody who reads and understands all these cultures. Even if I see something I don't like,
yeah.
I'm not, it doesn't hurt me to read that.
And
I'm just
also,
reading. The One of the things that I've been learning a lot of stuff about the Mongol conquests because of how it interacts with the Islamic world, and
yeah,
I knew a lot before, but there's been some really interesting comparisons. Like in the Crusades, in the entirety of the Crusades, 3 million Muslims were killed. Right, Genghis Khan killed 60 million Muslims. Okay, so like the scale of difference between the Crusades and the Mongol invasion is just insane. The number of people killed, cities of 200,000 people were wiped
yeah.
off the earth.
There's all like the Silk Road, right? That they had in the
Yes,
Middle Age. That used to be
um,
all populated, and the
that's
Mongol
right.
like just that was a result of the Mongol like killing everybody there, like, or people that wasn't killed just move away because of the Mongol.
Exactly. There's a city called Merv. No, almost no modern person, if you say Merv, they have no idea what you're talking about. But Merv was a city of over 200,000 people that was on the Silk Road,
Yeah.
and the Mongols just took all the bricks and carried them away after they murdered everybody. There's nothing in Merv anymore. Like it's totally wiped off the earth.
Yeah.
And if you don't, think about that, because a big part of this setting is that the clan that's in charge of the kind of caliphate type empire is weak, and there are steppe nomads that have warlords who could potentially come in and knock them off. There's desert groups like the Arabians originally who could come in and knock it off. There's monstrous groups like ogres and stuff. They could come in and do that. Stone giants and stuff. So a lot of the kind of tension that the GM could add from a global level in the setting is around that vulnerability. But in order to depict that, you need to understand the history of the Islamic world being taken over by different rival groups. The Uzbeks and the Ozgug Turks and all these different groups that came in and took over for a short time, and then they fell apart, and then a different group come in, and depicting those things realistically is not something Wizards of the Coast has any desire to ever do. So I'm not worried that there's going to be any competitor in the space. So I'm just building it to be a great setting, and then when it's done in a few months, it'll be I think it'll be a really awesome
And the
deal.
thing is, like, when like we want to touch on those settings, stuff like that, and we're like we are gonna have like our bias, we gonna have our perspective and stuff like that, and the depiction we can make might be imperfect, or we might, like, you say like your tag, like, not a real historian, like, so we might have gap, we might have like stuff like we misunderstood, or stuff like that have been like accidentally romanticized, but that's okay, right? Like, because like we still get something that touched that setting in the way we understand it, like in our understanding. And if somebody like think that it's not good enough, well, they're welcome to do their own, right? And to do
Yep.
to improve upon it or to correct, and then we can start a conversation. Just like staying away from it, it narrows what's gonna be offered so much,
Yep.
and we're losing all this richness, right? All this wealth of the human experience, in a sense, because we're too scared to touch it.
Well,
And even if
the
you want to go
atmosphere
there
that
and judge,
these people have created an atmosphere
yeah,
where this is just easily observable fact. I'm not spinning anything new. If you go on drive-through and look up stock art, it is overwhelmingly European
hmm,
forms, overwhelmingly European people, armor,
yeah, not
clothing.
necessarily people, but armor. Yes,
Yeah, that's right.
it's gonna be non-European people in European garb.
That's right. That's right. But that environment exists because these people are so malicious
Yep,
about attacking anyone who depicts non-Europeans in any
yep,
way that I have had 3 different artists, when I went to them and asked for stuff that was in the Islamic setting, they expressed relief that they could finally
all right,
work, because they had just been working on European stuff
yeah,
over and over and over and over. And
yeah,
that I didn't create the environment where these artists aren't getting to draw non-European people. It's these hateful people who attack every project that tries to depict non-European people. And at some point it's like, is that the outcome that you guys want? And if it is, then you're the real monsters here. You're like, how can you possibly come after me? I want to show these people. They don't
yeah,
even want you to draw these people. It's nuts. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's. Like, I don't understand like the logic behind it, because like you say, like, yes, like I said, like, you don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? It's like, let's have some, let's bring them in the conversation, and then we can like refine our understanding of them after. But if we never talk about them, if we never show them, if we never look at them, right, we're not gonna understand them. I've been all over the world, right, and I've seen things like, and I have like a strong preference for my own culture, because that's a culture I've grown in, obviously, and it's also a culture that has been developed for the people like me, right? I go to other countries. Sometimes I can, and I look with my bias and my perspective. I can see stuff like I don't like,
Yeah.
and I don't appreciate. But that's fine because I don't live there, and it's not my people. It's not my country, and they're allowed to live as they want, right? It's not to my preference, but then I go back home and I get to live around my preference, right? Those people, they have the right to have their own culture, and I can appreciate there when I can appreciate when I go there, right? Even like it's like, well, I wouldn't live there. Uh, I'm a boisterous guy with a lot of bravado. I'm loud and stuff like that. When I go to a place like Cambodia and I see people are very meek and very like diminutive and stuff like that, like I don't like it. It bothers me. Like I feel like everybody like has been beating down with a stick too much, which in that case might be true.
Yep.
But then like
I'm a very tall guy with big shoulders,
yeah,
and when I go to a place that it's like I'm like an ogre
yeah,
in human land, you know, like it's I stick out like a sore thumb, and I get it. I get what you're saying,
yeah,
and I think it's good. What I have, I don't get into politics because people get crazy and psychotic, but I'm gonna I'm gonna give a little peek under the hood for you tonight, Max, because I've seen you over a long time. I have the most radical of all political beliefs. I believe that people should get to vote, and then they get what they voted for. I know it's crazy, right? So like when my family is like going off on this or that politician, I'm like, well, did they get voted into office? And they're like, yes, they got voted in. And I'm like, well, then that's good. That's democracy. That's good. And they don't like, I don't care who it is. Like if everybody in your country votes for things to be a particular way, then you get to have it that way. I'm fine. And the idea that that's a radical political position, like that's you get what you vote for. Like if everybody votes for drugs to be illegal, then drugs
yeah.
are illegal. Like that,
And
my
I
opinion doesn't matter. The
I
people who lived in the place voted
exactly.
for the thing.
And
Why should I
I go
tell
even
them
further
what
than
to
you on
do?
that, right? I say that people have the right to be ruled over by the dictator they choose, right?
That's right. Yes, that's a good way of
Like so
putting
a lot of people are not democratic, but like you go there and people don't fucking care. Like people they don't thing works. You go to China and China is not democratic, but people like say, well, things are getting better. Like every year, like we're getting a little wealthier. Like there's a middle class. Things are on the run. So like people don't care. That's our value that we value those things,
it.
right? It's
That's
like
right.
you
Yeah.
talk to the people over there. It's like no, things are fine.
most
So
most people are happy with the way that their culture is, you know.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
idea that I should like, you know, I was born and grew up in Georgia. I've lived in Georgia almost my whole life. And the idea that I know better what's good for Georgia than all the people who have consistently voted in a particular way for a particular that well, I know better than all these millions of people, so I'm going to take my politics and I'm going to try to force those
yeah.
people to change. Like that's just nuts to me. And I
It's extremely egocentric, right? It's like
yeah,
it's like oh, society should be oriented all over my own personal
that's
belief
right.
and desire
Yeah,
and preference. Like and like I know I'm a weirdo. Like I don't expect society to be like organized to think like me, right? For people like
yeah.
me.
I
Like
mean,
I don't get
like if
mad. Like
you
I don't
were
like movies and TV show. I don't get mad that they don't make movies and TV show that I would like because nobody would fucking watch them.
and like if you're in medieval Arabia and you liberate somebody from medieval Arabia,
Mhm.
the reaction is probably going to be like, why are you kidnapping me from the place that I want to be at? Like,
Yeah,
like even if you liberated one of the sultan's wives,
yeah,
like she's not going to view that as liberation. She's, you know, like that was her normal existence that you just disrupted.
yeah,
So people just they have this idea that like every single place on earth should look like modern California, and if it
or
doesn't,
yeah.
then it has to be changed, and that's why Wizards of the Coast is declining and falling apart. Like,
They have
because
this
people don't want
utopic
that.
they have this utopic view, right? Of the like it's not only like modern California, because even there, like it's not perfect enough for them. Like it's their view of what
That's right.
like
Yes,
what it
even
should
there,
be,
it's
right?
not perfect.
Yeah, they want like it's very much so like cultural imperialism, right? And like I'm a nationalist, but like I'm a nationalist for every fucking nation. Every nation have the right to decide for their own people, or it should be, right? So yeah, I want my people and my place, right, to be ruled by my people and in the way that benefit my people in a sense, right? But I recognize this right further, right? And I don't understand, like it's so maddening to see those people like say like, oh no, this place is bad because they don't share my progressive value and stuff like that. Well, you know, those are your opinion, man.
That's right. Yeah, and if history is any guide, then no, it will not evolve in whatever way you're predicting it to evolve. I mean,
Well,
yeah,
no.
who would have thought? Who would have
Not at
thought?
all.
If you could go back to 800 AD, who would have been like, where the center of the world's power is going to be in
Yeah.
2000 years or 1800 years? Like, who knows? You have no
Yeah.
idea what's going to go on. So, like, the idea that you're on the right side of everything and stuff, and people just get,
And especially
yeah,
like when a lot of their novel ideas, they're not so novel. They've been tried before, and society that tried them and stick with them disappeared. Or society like at some point realized that those ideas were kind of bad and move on from them.
yeah,
So when you see that, like, yeah, no, your idea are probably not gonna win over. Like you're not on the right side of history. Like those things have been tried before and failed, have been abandoned, or the people that didn't abandon them disappear. But anyway, so I'm glad you're saying that you're gonna go in those kind of setting, and that you have like in a sense like got the balls to go there, because it's a desert, right? Without pun not intended. There's a drought of like yeah, it's good to see I know like Phil's gonna be happy with that. Phil the Thrill, my buddies always want to do like those desert setting.
I love the desert. I mean, maybe a third of the world map is desert.
Yeah.
There's the empire itself has 8 provinces. One of them is kind of like the Hindu Kush. One of them is like Syria. One of them is like Arabia.
Yeah.
The kind of center one is like Mesopotamia with multiple rivers and floodplains and everything like that. There's one that's like Anatolia, so it's kind of scattered around, and then there's one that's an island chain, kind of not fully like Indonesia. Indonesia's section is kind of out of the empire,
Mhm.
but kind of like a Arabian Nights type of island hopping with little desert islands and stuff. So all that all that diversity of people, diversity of ideas, and the player book, over half of it is going to be a gazetteer of that world, so that the player can just say, I think I'd really like to go up and play on the steppe. I'd really like to go play in the desert. I want to play it in those tropical islands. Um, Whatever it is, and just roll with that. I'm a big proponent of players being,
Yeah.
driving the action, and the GM is supporting them.
Big agree on that, obviously. Are you gonna keep the magic fairly low?
Yes, there's a system for genies in the game that basically the um, the religion is a monotheism of the sun god,
Mm-hmm.
but the moon is kind of like a sorceress or an enchantress, kind of agent that goes around and mucks things up for the sun god, and she created the genies. And so the sun god, he couldn't uncreate them, but he could attach conditions to them. So the genies, all genies are attached to an object or a place, so they can't roam around and take over territory or whatever. And then they can only use their magic if they've signed a contract with a non-genie, like the lamp type thing, that they've got. So
3
the
wishes.
a player character would go to a genie and try to make some kind of devil's bargain with them and say, if you, what I need this, what can you, what do you need? And then the genie demands things from them in order to satisfy that. But outside of that kind of being powerful, that's like wish level magic. The two spellcasting classes are mind affecting focused, or kind of support and reality changing focus, like haste spells and
Oh yeah.
other similar like boosting spells, rather than it being such a heavy focus on direct damage. And
All right.
is very much kind of you need to be a practitioner of this as an art, and it's a training thing, and not everybody is going to be running around casting cantrips all over the place. So yeah, it's very down to earth and focused on like trying to make it feel like the way that these texts from that time period make it feel, the way it feels like in books like 101 or 1001 Arabian Nights, or in some of the Persian writings, in some of the stuff we've learned about what's life like for the Ozgug Turks that are living on the steppe north of the Caspian Sea, and then bringing that into the game. So it really, every location, everything that I'm writing, I'm trying to focus on making it a unique feel compared to what we've been used to dealing with.
Yeah, and you're gonna do the same approach that you did with ShadowCity, like a Kickstarter with the.
It depends. I would like to eventually do offset print for it,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm gonna
That
look
might be
into
fun.
it, and
Yeah.
if it's just gonna be too much. I see a lot of people get in over their heads with things that they want. So if the amount of work and suffering involved to making an offset print is sufficiently high, I will just make it a print on demand and move on with my life. I don't need the headaches.
But that's a few months down the line anyway. You
Yeah.
still have like to produce it, and in the sense that's gonna be like ShadowCity when you're gonna to Kickstarter when it's ready to go.
Oh yeah. I don't believe in. Well, it's not a moral issue, but for me personally,
Yeah.
I don't want to
That's
ever
too much
get into a
investment.
situation. I hate being in a position where I owe somebody something.
Yeah. I agree.
So
I'm
yeah,
with you.
so if I put it up on Kickstarter, it is done.
Yeah. So in the meantime, ShadowCity, Blood and Neon. What you told me about it, I found very interesting. So people like go look it up, go look at the Kickstarter. I hope you have information to make an informed decision now. Uh, and oh, one more thing. Are you gonna maybe come back in the future and add like in the same kind of setting of Shadow City, and maybe like do like, oh wait, if you want to play those Slayer, those human hunter, is that something
I've
that
had a
you?
lot of people asking me for that,
Yeah.
and I work on kind of multiple things simultaneously, and I just have tons of ideas every day, all day long. I have tons of ideas.
Yeah.
So the
It's good.
idea, if Shadow City works out, then the next time my brain has kind of an open spot, if there's a lot of people that are going, I really, really want this, then that will inspire me to do, to put the time in. But if people are like, well, it was okay, whatever, that to me, it's about passion. Like I want to go where there's passion for the thing.
Mhm.
And so I'm hoping that by the time I kind of wrap up Karzim, there'll be a pent up demand for that kind of thing, and then I could release something along those lines.
Well, I'll be looking forward to it. I'm gonna get Shadow City. You convinced me, right? Like I like a
Oh,
lot of things you said here tonight. Like I said, like I always like been a bit like I have this hang up about vampire and stuff like that, but I like the direction you're taking them. Uh, not being like those moping around. A bit of a anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm gonna back that up, and I'm sure the people will like. Well, a lot of people did already, but I hope other people like Elf Hunter was saying I'm gonna buy that game. So there you go. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time, Chubby Funster. It was a fun talk.
It
We
was.
deviated there a bit toward the end, but it's always good also to know the people, the
Hey,
person.
but, I've been talking about Shadow City for weeks now. I'm happy to talk about other stuff sometimes.
Yeah. Well, if you want to come back at some point and like shoot the shit about other topic and stuff like that,
Sounds
you're
great.
welcome. Just let me know, man. I'm gonna end up to say thank you to everybody that watched live, that joined us live, and everybody that's gonna watch on the replay. Make sure to go subscribe to Chubby Funster and look at his Kickstarter down in the description or down in the below there in the description box.
And look for me on Twitter. I put tons of stuff on Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't put your Twitter down there. I tried
I
to
give it to you. No
amend.
problem.
Yeah, give it to me. I'm not there really. So, and I'll see you next time. Tomorrow, we're doing another Horizon session, so you can look up for that. And after that, well, we'll see. Take care, all. Thank you, Chubby Funster, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.